Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Today's video is a recap of the racing action at the Monster Mile over the weekend, and the topics we'll cover include what Kevin Harvick had to say to Clint Bowyer during qualifying on Saturday, the odd comment Brad Keselowski used to describe his feelings about Erik Jones sitting out a race, what Jones himself said about his broken back and the similarities to another crash last year, the confusion Fox created early on in the Xfinity Series race during a Hailie Deegan crash, and finally, Sunday's race where Denny Hamlin won for a third time in 2024, outlasting a hard-charging Kyle Larson. And I don't know if you were watching the post-race coverage, but there was an uncomfortable moment during the interview with Kyle Busch where the Richard Childress Racing driver called out Martin Truex's crew for running him over on pit road. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. Before we get to that moment, let's go back to Saturday morning at Cup Series qualifying. Kevin Harvick and Clint Bowyer were doing their normal joking on the broadcast, and if I'm being completely honest, sometimes it just feels awkward. I get they were teammates and they like to tease each other, just guys being guys, but there are times when I genuinely think Harvick is agitated and wants to strangle Bowyer. I could be totally wrong and he's doing it all for show, but Saturday morning was one of those times. Take a listen.
Did you hear what I said? I said an option tire that we're going to mandate you have to put on.
Has there ever been a fight in the
How
booth?
is that an option?
I feel like I need
Mandatory
to,
option. That kind of sounds like jumbo shrimp. It's an oxymoron.
I feel like
Is
I
that
should
you?
put him in a headlock
Is that
right
you?
now and choke him.
So you're agreeing with me?
Let's move on to a more serious subject, an Erik Jones visit with the media. During that conversation, the Legacy Motor Club driver, who said he had never had a broken bone in his life, made an interesting comparison to Ryan Blaney's big hit last year at Daytona.
The wreck itself, I went to NASCAR, looked at the car on Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe, and the wreck was really similar to Ryan Blaney's at Daytona last summer, and so the G's and the impact were similar to that. And kind of talking through with NASCAR what has to, get fixed to see an improvement there, and so obviously Ryan was uninjured in his, and I had an injury in mine, so kind of going through and figuring out what the difference is there, but it was real similar to his wreck.
70 G's. Whew. I know NASCAR is still currently looking into Jones's car and what happened in that violent incident. A broken back is serious, but then you compare it to Blaney's hit and he walked away fine. It sucks for Jones, but the car clearly did its job, as Jones also talked about, and we should all be grateful for that. With Jones sitting out of the Cup race, reporters naturally asked drivers their thoughts on the situation. The Athletics' Jeff Gluck asked Brad Keselowski how he thought it would make Erik Jones feel seeing someone else drive the number 43 car, and the RFK Racing co-owner gave, an unexpected analogy. Honestly, I got nothing. I don't know how to respond to that. Moving on to the afternoon in the Xfinity Series race. After last week's situation between Hailie Deegan and Riley Herbst, I wanted to see if Deegan had anything to say about it and listened early on to the number 15 team radio. I didn't hear the 22-year-old talk about Herbst because she didn't, but I did hear the whole communication with her team during her crash on lap 5, which she caused and admitted to shortly after it happened. Here's the audio.
Half back 4, half back, outside. All right, lock it down here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was trying to get up.
Yeah, 10-4. We'll take a look at it here.
Sorry about that. I thought I could get up real quick with that half up, but I think I just might have taken too long in the hole closed.
Clearly, by her own words and even her spotter's reaction, she was responsible for the incident. But that's not what J.J. Yeley said to reporters after the accident resulted in him making an early exit from the race.
I mean, I followed him from the start. He was having a hard time holding his lane. His racetrack awareness isn't there. If he has to rely on a spotter to know where cars are, he just doesn't as a race car driver. So, he clearly could see that 15 was where she was at. Again, we were early in the race. She was dropping like an anchor. So why he would try to force a situation like that, take out a couple race cars, again, it's not his first time doing it. At some point, he'll figure it out or someone have to figure it out for him.
So Yeley blamed Dawson Cram. Unsurprisingly, Cram responded later. The first 4 words in Cram's tweet say it all, since there's no replay. And here I am back to beating that dead horse once again. That same dead horse known as Fox's NASCAR coverage. There was no replay showing what started the incident between Deegan, Cram, and Herbst, so fans watching at home were only left to speculate what happened and who started it. Yeley was the first to get his version of events out publicly, and that was largely the narrative. But as Deegan, to her credit, admitted, it was on her. Not what she wanted to happen the week after recording her career-best Xfinity Series finish, but, as all racers say, moving on to the next one. Moving on to Sunday's Cup Series race, and over the last month, we've heard over and over about drivers and their inability to pass. That wasn't the case at Dover early on, and the early examples I offer are Kyle Larson, who had moved up 4 spots in the first 10 laps, and Christopher Bell, who gained 6 spots through the first 25 laps. There was plenty more throughout the field the rest of the day. For me, the other big story from that first stage was what happened to Ryan Preece in the number 41 car. Cameras showed smoke inside the cockpit of the Stewart-Haas racing vehicle on several occasions. He eventually pulled it into the garage and had some interesting words when talking to reporters. Take a listen.
I felt like I was on fire, and I went the first 70 laps just trying to push through, and then it got so bad that I couldn't put my hands on the wheel, and I was worried that an oil line or something would melt, and then the whole car engulfs in fire, and I don't want to be trapped in there having that happen. So I pulled off. Whatever happened is completely unnecessary, and we can't afford days like this. I'm not going to be the one to say what happened, but it wasn't necessary. It could have been prevented.
Unnecessary and could have been prevented. Wow. Not what you'd expect to hear, and it definitely makes me curious to where this is coming from. Martin Truex Jr. won that first stage that ended with Brad Keselowski spinning and bringing out the second caution of the day. The second stage ran caution-free, but things got spicy on the number 54 radio of Ty Gibbs when he was racing against fellow Toyota driver Bubba Wallace for the 10th spot throughout much of the segment. The young driver, yet again, failed to follow Kevin Harvick's advice from earlier in the season, telling him to scream and cuss but do it without pushing the talk button. When his frustrations boiled over with the number 23 car for aero blocking him, and he voiced his anger using some colorful language.
Thanks for aero blocking me. Just doesn't help us here.
They're not, yeah, I know it's frustrating, but they're not going to. He's going to let you get within a car length and then mirror drive and aero block. That's what these guys do. So we just got to figure out a way around them. It's the name of the game for everybody. That's fine. Just go back to tracking your black just like we were.
We'll f***ing do it then. Alright, them. That's all f***ing race. We'll do it like that.
In the end, Gibbs finished 10th and Wallace finished 32nd. Speaking of Wallace, the number 23 had a decent day going, running around the top 10 and finishing in that spot to close out stage 2, which was won by Kyle Larson. FYI, Ryan Blaney was the lone Ford inside the top 10 in both stages. More on that in a bit. But the 2311 racing driver suffered his second consecutive DNF in as many weeks, both not of his own doing, this time when Zane Smith got into the rear of the number 23 car, which got sideways and then shot down in front of traffic and collected William Byron and Christopher Bell. 3 top cars immediately out. But as expected, it came down to Denny Hamlin, who had the best car and led a race-high 136 laps versus Kyle Larson, who led 39 laps. The number 11 driver claimed his 3rd win of 2024 and continued the domination of Gibbs and Hendrick Motorsports this year, that victory being the 9th out of 11 races between the two organizations. Gibbs has won 4 times, with Bell's the other victory. While the Chevys and Toyotas are celebrating, the Ford camp is not in a good space. This weekend, Miles the Monster continued the Blue Oval's nightmarish start to the season with 0 wins in all 3 National Touring Series after 11 races. Blaney has been the anomaly. He finished inside the top 10 in both stages and the final result, finishing 7th. Interestingly, the Team Penske driver finished second best to what I consider one of the biggest surprises in 2024 in Noah Gragson, who got some good fortune on that final pit stop in the final stage and gained track position before battling against Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott to record an impressive 6th-place finish. For those keeping score, and I know Gregson is because he told me as much earlier this year at COTA, the 25-year-old SHR driver now has 4 top 10s, including his 3rd place last week at Talladega in the first 11 races. He's tied with teammate Chase Briscoe. I'm curious who had Gregson at the top of SHR on their bingo card. But those were the lone highlights for Ford, as the next best results were Josh Berry, Austin Cindric, and Joey Logano all finishing 14th, 15th, and 16th. Also deserving of a shout-out was Daniel Hemrick for his 9th place result for the 2nd time in as many weeks. After the race, Regan Smith caught up with 4th place finisher Kyle Busch, who recorded his 4th top 10 and 2nd top 5 of the year. However, at the beginning of their conversation, you could see in the background that the crew of Martin Truex Jr. was moving the number 19 car, and just by the angle and the direction everyone was looking, it was going to be close to clipping Busch, who had no idea what was going on behind him. He soon found out and didn't hesitate to let the viewing audience know what he thought about it.
But, proud of everybody on this FICO Chevrolet. The car was pretty decent. I felt like if we came off a pit road there at the end, just run me over, okay? It's cool.
A little bit later, Busch's former JGR teammate didn't have anything to say about that pit road incident, but he didn't try to hide his frustration on another subject that's dogged his team after leading the 2nd most laps at 69 and finishing 3rd.
Perfect car up front, and you come out 2nd or 3rd, and it's plowing. So I don't know. I feel like every time we hit pit road, we lose the lead or lose spots. So it's frustrating.
I've said it before, and I'll likely say it again. JGR pit crews are wildly inconsistent. The only one that appears to have any consistency is the number 11 car, and look what he's done. Truex is thinking he should have had at least 1 win this season had it not been for his pit road struggles. And based on past history, this problem isn't going away anytime soon. In other words, there will likely be some spicy radio conversations with the number 19 team in the future. All right, gang, that's a wrap on this episode. We covered a lot, but I want to get your thoughts on all of it, including how you feel about the banter between Harvick and Bowyer, fan or not. And I already know what you think about Fox missing the Deegan incident. What about Ryan Preece's comments? Is there something more that we're missing? And what do you think about the Blue Ovals? 11 weeks in and no wins across all 3 series. And finally, I'm starting to think ahead to an episode around June 16th and Father's Day. I want to hear your NASCAR-specific Father's Day gift ideas, and hopefully I'll get my hands on one of your ideas and give it away to one lucky winner. Remember, if you want to read my written work, go check it out at heavy.com and beatingandbanging.com, where you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter, and you'll receive an email each Friday recapping the top stories from the week, including reviews of the various NASCAR-related podcasts. Also, make sure to check out my Beating and Banging podcast on the Blue Wire Network. There's a link in the description. Thanks as always for supporting the channel, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.